Good afternoon, and welcome to the GA4 Justice with your community activist, the one and only Georgia Allen.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Welcome, 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 family, friends, and everybody. It's always good to be here each and every week to just have a conversation. I want to always thank Henderson Vaughn, our favorite DJ, absolute favorite DJ. We call him Captain 85 and now the Dream Maker. And he just makes it available to us. He opens up his airways to us to allow us to have a conversation with our community. And we try to come to you each week with some positive conversations, but also informative conversations. So I always like to say I like to have a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. And that is to make sure that the information that goes back into our community is one that we can trust, we can rely on. And I'll tell you over and over again, you can always check me. And if I find out I've made a mistake or you found out I made a mistake, please call me, let me know, because I believe that we should correct that which we err on. But with that being said, today's topic is What Time Is It? Part 2. We had a conversation last week about conservatives and how they're working or not working, how they're operating or not operating, how they're determining that they're conservative and the things that they do and the things they don't do. And so this week, we're going to focus a little bit on the liberals. But before we get started, there are two things that I want to mention. One is about unity. And I want to mention that because most of you may have seen what took place in Montgomery, Alabama over the weekend when a gentleman who was either a captain of the ship or someone that worked at the riverfront tried to get these people to move their boat or move their tugboat or whatever it was. And they decided that they didn't want to move their boat and decided that they wanted to jump on this young gentleman. And he threw his hat up in the air. And lo and behold, the cavalry came. And what is so positive about, even though there's negative in it, what is positive about it is watching the community come together on one accord. And this is significant because as many of you know, when I talk each week, I also focus a lot of times on Kwanzaa. And it came to me, the purpose is to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. And when I saw the young people and the older people and the women and the men come together to the rescue of this gentleman, it just made me feel like we were bringing ourselves back to our traditional greatness, our traditional unity, and making sure that we protect one another when we see our people in trouble or in distress. And so the other community, and it's challenging sometimes to identify the community because I hate this majority and minority type thing because it minimizes those who are considered the minority, which is the Black community. But it just so happened that it was the community that tries to identify themselves as majority decided that they didn't feel the need to listen to the person who was in authority. Okay, keep in mind, this is a so-called majority community that felt like because this gentleman did not look like them, they didn't have to listen. They didn't have to comply. And so I kind of wanted to start the show today a little bit, just talking about that and just reminding our community how important it is to be unified, how important it is to be self-determined, how to make sure that we come together on one accord, and make sure that we work together collectively. Make sure that we're responsible for each other and not leave each other out there in the cold. So that's my beginning. The next thing that I want to talk about, the next person that I want to talk about, is one of a civil rights giant that we lost on August the 4th. I think they told us about it the next morning, of course, because I'm sure the family wanted to, have some time to process the fact that they'd lost their husband, their father, their grandfather, brother, and all. But on Friday, August the 4th, Thursday, August the 4th, we lost uh, Charles James Ogletree Jr. And why this gentleman is very important to me is because he was also in the civil rights struggle. He was also someone who fought for justice. Um, Professor Ogletree was an American attorney, a law professor, and the Jesse Clemenko Professor at Harvard Law School. Professor Ogletree was a founder of the school's Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice. And he was also an author on various books and legal topics. Attorney Ogletree was born December 31st, 1952. And of course, he passed away on last Friday, August the 4th. And he was only 70 years old. I want you guys to pause for a moment and think about that. Because of that, years ago, 70 seemed like it was very, very old. Well, I sit before you as a 70-year-old woman today. So it hit home with me when we lost him last week. But what was so instrumental about Professor Oglesby is he also was a former president of the Black American Law Students Association. It was later known as the National Black Law Students Association. So it was the American Law Students Association, but then they renamed it. And he was a tireless advocate for civil rights, human dignity, and social justice. So again, it's personal for me as someone who's been in the fight, who has been out here, been an activist on the front lines for many, many years. And now he's one of our ancestors. He also represented Anita Hill versus Clarence Thomas when she accused him of sexual assault. It was Professor Attorney Charles Ogletree that represented her. He was lovingly nicknamed Tree. He also was the attorney for Tupac Shakur, both on civil cases as well as other cases, both civil and criminal cases. He also fought when he was, in different challenges, situations. But the other thing that he fought for the descendants of the Tulsa, Oklahoma community. Those who survived, I should say the survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma race massacre. And that was in 1921 that the massacre took place. But Attorney Ogletree was the attorney. And he fought for them. And while he was not able to achieve reparations for them during his lifetime, that fight still continues. And he was also the professor for both our former president, Barack Obama, and our forever First Lady, Michelle Obama. He was their professor. But he also was a professor and supporter of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who currently serves on our U.S. Supreme Court. So he touched a lot of lives. He also was a professor to Hill Harper, who's an actor, but he's also running for Senate, I want to say, in the state of Michigan. So Attorney Charles Ogletree touched a lot of lives. A lot of people genuinely loved him, respected him, and he even defended um, the professor from Massachusetts, where the cops came and arrested him at his own home. Uh, Professor Gates, who's also a professor at Harvard University. So I wanted us to take some time to remember some of our people, because we have a tendency to get busy with everything that is going on, and we forget that these people worked on our behalves, whether we knew them or not. And keep in mind, a lot of people probably have never ever heard of Attorney Charles Ogletree. Um, they're not in law, or they may not be in civil rights, or they may not watch the programs where he was a commentator and spoke about issues that affects our community, and may not be familiar with his media appearances and his contributions, where he spoke on ethics in America, where he talked about the state of the Black Union and where do we go from here, chaos or community. When he talked about that, and moderated um, those type of forums, I had the opportunity to meet him. I had the opportunity to hear him live because of civil rights and because of the NAACP. So he was at several of our conventions, and he also was someone who talked to the attorneys, because they have what they call CLE, continuing legal education. And the NAACP, because of our work in civil rights and our work in legislation and our work in litigation, they always have CLE classes every time we go to conventions. So we have the opportunity to meet any number of high profile attorneys from time to time. And Professor Ogletree was one of the people that was there at one of them. I can't remember because I've gone to so many conventions over the years, but he was also always very direct. But this is what I want to share. The last thing that I want to share with you with regards to Attorney Ogletree, professor at Harvard University, who passed away, is what Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson said. And she said, Professor Ogletree was a role model who inspired legions of students, not just one, but legions of students, to seek to improve our criminal justice system and make our world a better place. And I don't think there's anything else that we can say that better epitomizes Attorney Charles Ogletree than the work that he did with young people to help them and guide them to understand the importance, the significance of improving our criminal justice system. Anyone who has a family member or they have had to experience the American criminal justice system, you know for yourself that the justice system that you see on the court buildings and all, where justice is supposed to be fair, supposed to be even, it's supposed to be doled out equitably. Many of us or our family members do not see that same justice system that you see when you see Lady Justice. And so I hope that those who had the opportunity to be in his classroom, to listen to his lectures, to understand the importance of working toward making sure that they improve our criminal justice system. I hope as he leaves that we see many young people stand up, follow in his footsteps, and improve upon what he began. Um, I love this song by Ashford and Simpson called Solid, Solid as a Rock. And that's how I feel about attorney Charles Ogletree, Professor Charles Ogletree. He was solid as a rock. He taught people solidly on standing on principles. He taught them uh, how this fight is not over and that there are things that young people can do in all areas of their lives to bring about a real change in our society, not just in your local neighborhood, in your community, but your overall society. You can bring about a significant change to make life better. Of course, he received a number of awards and accolades, and um, just a super person. And that was Henry Louis Gates that he was the attorney for. When how do you get arrested on your own doorstep at your own house?
It can't happen.
How does that happen in a nation who supposedly prides itself in justice? How does that happen? But it did. It happened right on his own doorstep. No, sir, is this your home? Nothing like that. I'm just going to immediately decide to draw my gun and to decide that you need to be arrested. So, living in this nation, living in this country, we need to understand that we have work to do. That it's not simple living in America as a Black person. As a matter of fact, our lifespan is simply shorter because of racism, because of the stress, because of hatred, because of the things that are done to us, that our lifespan is shorter because we suffer so much, even down to what I opened with Montgomery, Alabama. That incident will have a negative impact on the gentleman who was doing his job of telling them to move. And we see it over and over again. Um, our young people being pulled out of a car, or the guns pulled out because they misread a license tag. And I know I said I was going to talk about what time is it. Well, guess what? This is about what time is it. And the time is for us to make some serious changes, for us to get actively involved in our local communities and make sure that we're doing the things we need to do, that we have to do. That's what time it is. It's time for us to make some real changes in our own community so that we can begin to try to alleviate these things from happening in the first place. Okay. Uh, a, a family should not be driving down the road, and because someone accidentally called out the wrong license tag, the cops need to come to their car and just yelling and screaming. No, there's nothing wrong with them coming to the car and saying, "Hey, can I have your license? We got a call that said that this car was stolen." A conversation could have probably been had right at that moment, because one person can be at the car door while the other police officer is standing in the back, just in case, if they did have the right car. So these are the type of things that our children have to deal with. And if you looked and you saw the child who was distraught, and they put handcuffs on the child. They put handcuffs. So that is going to impact his life for the rest of his life. So what time is it? It's time for us to change our policing in this nation. That's what time it is. Okay. And when you hear, defund the police, for the Black community, defund the police does not mean that we don't want police officers. We call the police department probably more than almost anybody. But we want competent police officers in uniform. And so how do we get that done? What time is it? It's time for some of you young people to stay out of trouble so that you can be someone that can join the police force and come there with compassion and empathy and build relationships within your own community, so that when someone sees you coming, they don't automatically assume that you are a threat to them. They see you more as a friend than as a threat. So that's what time it is, young people. That's what time it is, America. And so last week I focused on the conservatives. This week I'm going to focus on the liberals. And you say, well, what can you say about liberals? Oh, there's a whole lot we can say about liberals. Okay. Just like anything else, nobody's perfect. So there are things that we can say about the liberals. And first thing I want to say when we start, the very first thing I want to say about liberals, guess what? You didn't break everything, so don't think that you're supposed to be the one to fix everything. There are a lot of people in this country. As a matter of fact, I pulled the numbers, and when I pulled the numbers, they said there are 341,195,251 people. Now, that's when I pulled the numbers about 10 o'clock this morning. Well, guess what? Some more babies have been born. So this number is not the right number. It is an approximate number, okay? Because I'm sure somebody will pull the numbers later on today and say, well, she said this at 12:23 this today, and I pulled the numbers, and the number says something totally different. You're absolutely right, because people are born every minute. People are born every hour. There are people always being born. So therefore, the number that I gave you did not include the 10 or 20 or 30 babies that have been born since I pulled the numbers. Because, you know, you always have those folks out there that want to find something that they can say something about. So with that being said, what time is it? It is time for liberals to understand that they can't fix everything. While they say they are the big tent, and that big tent consists of everybody, every group, every race, creed, color, religion, all types of stuff. Old people, young people, everything, because it's a big tent. That big tent consists of progressive, conservatives, blue dogs, the new Democrats, the liberals, the moderates, the centrists, and conservatives. There's a very progressive. There's the progressive New Guard. They're the justice group within this umbrella of folk. Now, when you have an umbrella that large, keep in mind you're going to have to come to some type of consensus. So what time is it? It is time for you to realize that, one, you can't fix everything, and two, you need to know how to work within your own organization, your own group, in order to identify 2, 3, 4, 5 top items, work on that, get that fixed, get that done, and then work on something else. And again, keep in mind, you cannot fix everything. So therefore, sometimes when your constituent base comes to you, instead of you looking at it from a standpoint of, let me fix this for you, you need to look at it from a standpoint of, let me guide you to. Not let me fix it for you, but let me guide you to. Because sometimes you just need to guide people in a direction where some of those issues and all can be resolved, sometimes within community. Sometimes it's not a policy situation that needs to be changed. Sometimes there are things that need to be done within your core group of people. Sometimes it's an issue that may be germane to this area over here or this part of the city that may not even be an issue somewhere else. Some of those things may need to be fixed with legislation, and some things may not need to be fixed with legislation. So, to the liberals, what time is it? It's time for you to understand that you cannot fix everything. Now, with these groups that are in your umbrella, underneath this big tent umbrella, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about your progressives. You have progressives who run for office against people that are already in the party for a seat that you already have. So, what time is it? It's time for some of these people, if they're that progressive, to look around at some other seats, because politics is all about addition. It's not even Steven. If all I did is replace one person in my party with another person in my party, I have not gained a seat. I've only made it the same. So in order to gain seats, you actually have to run against your competition. If you want to control a local legislative body, such as your state House of Delegates or your state Senate or your state governor, you actually have to run against those people. You can't just run against each other. So what time is it? It is time for you to open up your eyes and recognize that what you are doing isn't working in a manner that is allowing you to get legislation passed, because you haven't added anything. You just broke even. That's all you've done. You've just broke even. But if you want to add to your numbers, go into some of these areas that you don't have the seat and run against those folks. Run against them. If your policies are legit, and if your policies and your ideas and your thoughts and your progression and all of that, if it's that good, then sell it to the other folk and get them to vote for you. Because I believe some of the things that you want are legit. But if the only people you're selling it to is to the same people, you haven't advanced your cause. The whole point is to advance your cause. And what you're doing right now does not advance the cause. Now, you may complain that you didn't get everything you want. What time is it? It's time for you to add additional numbers so that you have enough votes to pass the policy that you want. Okay? Because if you don't control the House and they set up the committees and they identify who the chairpersons are going to be, you're not doing yourself any favor running against someone in your own party. So it's time for you to run against people in another party, okay? It is time for you to get new seats, get additional seats. Because running against each other does not gain you an additional seat. Whether you win or lose, it does not gain you an additional seat, because you already had that one. So what time it is it? It's time to put up some guardrails for some of this stuff that's going on. Because right now, you're running around loosey-goosey. Liberals, you're just running around loosey-goosey, honey. I'm just going to be straight with you. Okay, you need to put up some guardrails within your own family and say, look, these are the items that we're going to push this year or this quarter or for the first 6 months. And we're going to work on those items until we get them across the finish line. Now, keep in mind, everybody's got a voice. So you may not get everything, but it's better than getting nothing. So what time is it? It's time to stop deciding that if I can't get everything I want, then I'm just going to vote against it. Well, guess what? That is an option. That is definitely an option. But getting nothing is not working for you, because all you're doing is going back home and crying and saying, well, they should have done more. Well, you should have voted to get something. you should have voted to get something. Am I right, Mr. Henderson?
You already know what time it is. Loosey goosey. Get something done. Stop sitting
Get
on the
something done.
sideline and putting all the work on one individual. GA for Justice, Georgia Allen.
And yes, we are in some unusual times. We got all kinds of craziness going on. We got people that are doing all types of stuff that I would have never guessed when I was a child growing up, or when I became a teenager, or when I first became an adult, that people would actually believe stupidity. I didn't know that. I had no clue that I would grow up one day and see folks running around sucking up to somebody who makes it very clear that they don't like them in the first place. I would have never thought. I thought there were intelligent people that could tell right from wrong or good from evil. I thought they were intelligent enough to be able to do that. Now, I don't know how many people have watched. It's on right now on Netflix. It's called Dirty. I think it's Dirty Money. That kind of goes along with what I've been talking about. What time is it?
Mm.
It's time to go back, watch Dirty Money, watch all the things that have happened over time. You know, the Bernie Madoffs and the Enrons and the banks collapsing and all of that, and realize that that's not a workable system. That doesn't work. And those people were able to do all of those things because they had politicians who allowed it to happen. So what time is it? It is time for you to recognize that you're going to have to do something different. Okay? Being very progressive, being conservative, being liberal, being blue dog, being just progressive or moderate or centrist or the justice group, all of those things sound okay. But if you're not willing to come together on one accord, if you're not willing to work together, if you're not willing to understand that you're not playing a game to win, you will lose. Okay. Now they have what they call the progressive left. And these are the folks that are very, very liberal all across the board. I don't care what it is. Anything that's out there, I'm for that. Okay. So they don't moderate anything. Okay, this person came to me and said, you know what? I want this. And you say, oh, well, that sounds liberal enough for me. Let me just go ahead on and vote for it. Versus, let's take a look at this. Let's look at it from more than one perspective. It's time for you to examine what can get done and what becomes a soundbite to your detriment. It's time for you to look at things from more than one perspective. A lot of people thought that I was a liberal. I'm conservative, believe it or not. Now, are there some liberal things that I agree with? Absolutely. Are there some moderate things that I agree with? Absolutely. But my base, how I grew up, what my belief system is pretty darn conservative. Does that mean that I won't do things that tend to be a little more liberal and occasionally progressive? Maybe. Maybe. But for the most part, when I vote against what's going to be to my detriment. Okay. If I know this person over here is riling up people to operate in a manner that is not only to my detriment now, but to my detriment of my future family members who will be here long after I'm gone, then my vote may be different because I'm not just looking at me. I'm looking at me and my future generations. I'm looking at me and grandchildren, great grandchildren, great, 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 great. You know, these people that are living today who came out of the Tulsa, Oklahoma, they are generational. Okay. Even though some of them were alive when the Tulsa massacre took place. I'm glad they're calling it a massacre because that's what it was instead of a riot. No, the riot was on the side of those folks that was, you know, created the situation. They were the rioters, not the folks who was living in their home, minding their business. Okay. You guys came in and massacred them. You burned them out. Now you were supposed to be law and order. You were supposed to have Christian values and understood to love your neighbor. But you came in somebody else's community and you burned them out. So that was a massacre. And so what time is it? It is time for these people to get reparations. That's what time it is. It's time for them to be treated fairly, even though some of them are like 101, 103, 109. They are still alive. But what's also is important is their kids and their grandkids, the people that were there in 1921 when this occurred. They had children, and those children had children, and those children had children. And so they should be compensated for all that their family lost. So what time is it? It's time to get busy. It is time to get busy. And when I hear progressive talking about all this other stuff, and yes, I believe in the environment, and yes, I believe in some of these social issues and things of that nature. But what I believe in is people getting reparations. I need them to be repaired. I need those people, the things that was done to them, I need it to be fixed. And so while we cannot fix and while the liberals can't fix everything, there are some things that they can focus in on and just narrowly focus on that and bang it until it's done. And when people see that, people will say, you got results. Because at the end of the day, people want to know, did you solve a problem? You know, there is just so much, so very much that's going on in our schools with regards to books, with regards to all of these various things. And what time is it? To my community, it's time for every single solitary Black church to open up a freedom school in their church. Now, on this street, you got 5, 6, 7 churches. 2 of those churches can be for the elementary school, 2 can be for the middle school, and 2 can be for the high schoolers over in the community. And you guys should be working on that. That's a liberal idea. That's kind of liberal idea. Go ahead. If they do not want to teach properly in the school system, just like many of these other communities that have schools for their children on Saturday, even if they go to school all week, on Saturday, they still got to go to their school of faith or whatever group they are a part of. So likewise, do the same thing. If they're not going to teach your children truth in the school system, use your church building for something other than Sunday morning service and Wednesday night Bible study and Thursday choir rehearsal. And while all those things are great, and I don't diminish them in any way whatsoever, what time is it? It is time to teach our own children. Just like we did back in the day when school was segregated and we taught our children and they were bright, smart, went off to college or learned a trade or whatever, but they were self-sustaining because they had the foundation. And I'm going to go back to it again. Solid as a rock. Okay. Solid as a rock. And I will always love that song. And I will always love Ashford and Simpson. Broke my heart when he left here and became an ancestor. Broke my heart because I had loved him ever since I can remember. Okay. But again, what time is it? It is time for liberals to understand that no, you cannot fix everything. You need to have some guidance that you can provide to the community to help them. And there's a little thing called a compass. Okay. That compass can tell you which road to take. Okay. It's kind of like what they call GPS now and all this other stuff. But that compass, when you had that compass, even if you were walking in the woods, the compass would lead you to the location that you were trying to get to. You need a compass because sometimes liberals, I don't think y'all have a compass that will guide you where you're supposed to go. And so that keeps people up in arms because they don't feel like you're getting stuff done. And you are. And I know that you are in many instances. Yes, you are. If you go down the list of accomplishments with regards to what has taken place over the last 2 years, not to mention what happened over 8 years ago. Yeah, we're up to over 6 years ago. Healthcare. Okay. What time is it? You may need to tweak the healthcare bill and make it better. What time is it? Social Security. You may need to tweak that. What time is it? You may need to reduce spending in other areas because it seems that only one group decide that they want to actually work on policy and legislation, and the other group would rather do rallies. But doing rallies is not going to put food on people's tables. Doing rallies is not going to make sure that your children get to go to college. Doing rallies is not going to make sure that people have the proper health care. So there's one group that does rallies and speeches, and there's another group that work, but they don't tell people what the work is that they're doing. So what time is it? It is time for you to go to the microphone and let people know what it is that you're doing and how that is beneficial to them. That's what time it is. So we need the two parties. One, could you just tell us the truth? That would be helpful. Could you work on issues and not sit around and make up stuff all day long? You remind me of people that go to work every day and they're sitting at their job and they're looking around trying to find something to do other than work. It's time for me to go to go and take a break. Let me go get a cup of coffee. They sit down again and they get back up again. Oh, let me have a conversation with my buddy over here. And that's what one party looks like. They're always busy doing absolutely nothing but making a whole lot of noise. And then we have the other party who actually, liberals, you do. I can give you that. You do actually try to do legislation, but you try to fix everything. Sit back, identify, and determine what is necessary now and what can be done later. And what can we negotiate to say, you know what? This might not necessarily need to be a legislation. Maybe it simply needs to be you sitting down in your community and you're identifying what services are there and what are some best practices to work on this particular issue. And maybe that's not an issue for Congress. Maybe that's an issue for your local government. Or maybe that's an issue for your state government. And Congress, you need to tell people to stop sending you all this stuff that you can't work on, that you cannot fix. That's what time it is. That's what time it is. And to the community, what time is it? It is time for you to do some homework. I know they're taking um, um, history and some of the things that we were accustomed to having when we were in school that talked to us about um, how the government works. And I know they've taken some of those things out of school systems, but I'm going to be honest with you, which I try to do each and every week. You're going to have to do some research on your own. You really are going to have to do some of this for yourself. You cannot rely on elected officials to do for you what you can do for yourself. So I need my people, I need my community to recognize what time it is. It is time for us to get busy. It's time for us to communicate. It's time for us to start our own programs within our own communities, to develop our young people, to help them understand how the government operates, to help them understand how to bring policy before local government, how to go before government and plead your case. Okay, because that's part of what you're supposed to be doing. You are actually supposed to be teaching the children how to go and speak before city council, how to go and speak before school board. They have all types of committees. They have planning department, zoning department. The way we have things zoned right now may not be the way that young people would like to see things zoned in the future. So get them involved now so that they can make educated decisions with regards to how things are going to be set up. We have a situation right now in Virginia Beach where there's a Black community that they want to put a battery manufacturing plant in their community. So what time is it? And I can say that the community has done this already. It's time for the community to come together, which is one thing. Have open meetings, town halls, public forums, educate one another in that community. That's what time it is. But then go before your city council and plead your case. That's what time it is. It's also time for them to talk with their planning department. And I say this to people, whether they live in my city or live somewhere else. If it happens in our city, it can happen somewhere else. So the policies and the practices that are going on in one place are similar to places somewhere else. So therefore, get in the habit of doing some of these things, whatever city you live in, wherever you may be. Understand that you can't sit there and say, this is what the government is doing to me, or I can't get these people to listen to me. And if it appears that they're not listening to you, hold your own meetings and operate like a city council in your own community. Hold your own meetings. Find your own spokespeople and stop looking for somebody to come and fall out the sky and be your leader. Sometimes that leader may just happen to be you. So what I want our community to understand is the time is now to get busy, to go out and to speak and plead your case. We've allowed other people to plead our case for us. and you hear the AFLs talk about this all the time. Long have people pleaded our case for us. Now is the time to plead our own case. Okay? Because if we don't, then they may not plead it the way it needs to be done. So that's what time it is. It is time for us to get involved. It is time for us to call on our relatives, our friends, and bring them together. We had to do that on Tuesday night again. Again, in the city of Virginia Beach, we had to come together one more time for a public hearing with regards to the 10-1 voting system. So a number of us came out, a number of us spoke, a number of us did not speak. But the point of the matter is they were there in support. And even though they may not have gone to the microphone and spoke before city council, the mere fact that they were there and we were surrounded by one another, it said to the council that these people are not backing down. And sometimes that is a message that you need to send. And that is whether it is in Tennessee, Nashville, or wherever. When we see incidents, I think Nashville was a gun violence situation. Montgomery was the fight where they decided to beat up a black man because he was telling them to move their boat. And so whether it's here in Virginia Beach or whether it's in any of these other cities, you're still going to have to stand up. You're going to have to fight for issues that you care about, because those issues sooner or later are going to affect you personally or may affect your children or grandchildren. So, one, you want guidance. You want some direction. You want some type of guidance when you're out here on the battlefield. You need some guardrails, okay, to protect you against persons who are doing things that are not in your best interest. So you need to be able to have guardrails, and guardrails sometimes could be legislation that says this is the law. You cannot do this. Or it could be policy. There could be policy things that are in place that says, okay, this is not the way things should operate. And so therefore, if we have the right policies in place, we may not have to get to legislation, simply because we have educated the community. They know what the policies are. It's no different than living in a apartment complex and they have policies on the books that says, okay, you cannot do this, or you cannot do that, or you can't have a vehicle in the parking lot that has no license tags on it, hasn't been running. That's policy. Okay, that's policy. Legislation says, or laws says, that you will go to jail, or you may have to go to court, or you may, so it gets a little stronger, because it generally will turn into, this may lead to an arrest. Most of the time with some policies, you might have to pay a fine, but that doesn't necessarily lead to any type of arrest. your homeowners association may say, okay, if you do not do this is policy, then this is what we're going to do. We're going to charge you a fee because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. So keep in mind, there are different things that you may need. In some instances, you may simply need policies. In other instances, you may need legislation. In other instances, you may need litigation. So there are different things for different instances. And so I hope that this kind of helps you and guides you to understand a little bit better about what time we're living in, what are some of the things that we need to do collectively, individually, but also what is that we need to call on our elected officials to do. Because if we're not talking to them, if we don't call on them, if we don't ask for something, and keep in mind, policy may or may not change for one individual. Sometimes it will, but the majority of the time, policy generally changes when there is a collective. And if you look at Kwanzaa, it always talks about collective this or collective that we need to work together. Any of those principles, they generally are collective principles. They're not individual principle for you and you alone. It's for the group as a whole. It's for the community as a whole. It's for all of us. It's not for one. It's for all of us. So as we go forward this week, I want you to kind of think about these last 2 weeks. I want you to think about what I shared with you. And then I want you to go back into your homes, go back into your communities, and ask yourself, based upon some of the information that I received, because you don't necessarily take all of it. I always tell people, treat it like a grocery store. Some of the things you're going to take off the shelf, some of the things, just leave it on the shelf. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Okay? I'm not here to fix your problems. I'm here to hopefully give you some ideas, some thoughts, and get you to thinking instead of just going down the same road where you found yourself stagnated. And you're like, I'm frustrated, I'm stagnated, I just can't do anything. And I want to tell you, you can do something. You may not be able to do everything, but you can do some things. And I'm going to close it out real quick with a couple of items. Here in Virginia Beach, we have what we call Parks After Dark. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night at Williams Farm. I want to encourage you to go to Williams Farm and enjoy the activities that they have there. There's no cost. It's for the whole entire family. The second thing we have is monthly topics, and it's done by a young lady who was part of Elaine Laurier's campaign. I don't know if you can see this, but anyway, in August the 22nd, she's going to have a voter education, registration, and absentee voting seminar, and it's going to be at 6:30, August the 22nd, at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Baker Road. So if you live in Virginia Beach, please take advantage of some of these options. There's also going to be an upcoming Caribbean Fest on the 7th, 8th, and 9th at Town Point Park in downtown Norfolk. It starts at 10 a.m. So take advantage of some of these things. And we are about to run out of time. So it was great to talk with you today. Look forward to seeing you next week. And Georgia, GA for Justice is signing off. Have a great day.
What a great show as usual. You've been listening and watching GA for Justice with your host, the one and only community activist, Georgia Allen. And don't forget to share this with your associates on the World Wide Web. And tune in next Thursday from 12 until 1. Until then, this is GA for Justice saying so long.